Hello you guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be tackling my 10 favorites of 2024. Hopefully you'll be able to get some recommendations from these. And yeah, I think we'll just dive right in. First up, because it is the shortest, is Dreamworks by Mary Oliver. This poetry book is incredible. I wish I was more of a poetry girl, but a lot of times it kind of goes over my head. I feel like the review on the back of this book is very telling. It says the music in Oliver's writing is unmistakable. I think personally this is her best work. You could just like completely dive into this book. Me and my mom used to read it over FaceTime. One poem that'll just draw you in. I really recommend Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. It's my absolute favorite and it's in this book. Next up is this absolute brick of a book, Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. I read the Throne of Glass series, I want to say starting in 2023. I tried to do the tandem read. If you know, you know. It is a lot of mental effort, not only to read the books, but also to figure out how to coordinate the two books that you tandem read. I think that if you're a patient reader that has to read it in perfect chronological order, I can definitely see the benefits of a tandem read. For me personally, it put me into an unbelievable book slump, and I had to DNF the books, like soft DNF, for I want to say like 5 months before I picked them back up again and read them separately. Some people skip Tower of Dawn. I really think you shouldn't. It adds so much to the series, especially the finale. I mean, this is 120 chapters and 984 pages. So there's a time investment here, and so you want to get the most payoff. And I think honestly Tower of Dawn had one of my favorite characters introduced in it. In this particular series, the characters are so fleshed out and you feel so personal. Even the characters that I'm like, I literally couldn't have less in common with them, felt so near and dear to my heart. I can't really talk too much about the characters because the series has so many plot twists and so many secrets uncovered, but it was an absolute honor to read this book. Like, that's how incredible it was. I think there's like 9 or 10 books in the series leading up to this one. If you count Assassin's Blade as 4 separate books, then I think that works. But I just remember finishing this book and crying because I was so sad to leave the characters, and that might seem dramatic, but I spent like over a year and a half with these characters and they felt so personal to me, especially Dorian. I love Dorian so much, and I love our main character and the main love interest, and it's not even super romantic-y based. I would say romance is a very, very small subplot, but it's so good. And I've never loved series like this. And I think it's because I spent so much time with them. So if you're thinking about diving in the new year, this is your sign to do so. Next up, which is also a finale in the Magnolia Parks universe. This isn't technically the last book in the whole series, but this is the last Magnolia Parks book in the series, and that is Into the Dark by Jessa Hastings. I also feel so connected to these characters and couldn't have less in common with them, to be honest, but it feels essentially like Gossip Girl based in London with shockingly more drama and more lore than Gossip Girl, which Gossip Girl was one of my favorite shows growing up, so I don't make that comparison lightly, but I think you don't really get a fictional universe that focuses on socialites the same way. Like, young socialites have so much money and access and privilege. I think this delves a lot deeper into the issues than Gossip Girl does. You really go on a ride with this one, so I can't say too much, but just Magnolia makes my heart hurt, and I love these characters so dearly. I'm really excited for the Daisy Hates book. So there's 2 different types of books in this series. One follows Magnolia Parks, the other one follows Daisy Hates, but they're all interconnected. Like, you cannot read them out of order, or at least I wouldn't recommend you doing so. But where the last book before this one leads off, that was a Magnolia book, is so unbelievable. That then to go through this one, and she deals with a lot of things that I can relate to, and the way she deals with them feels really authentic. Both of these have insane found family, and that's my favorite in any book. So yeah, those two were definitely probably my top books. I would put Mary Oliver as like in between, like in the, maybe is like my third favorite of the year. Next up, we have Funny Story by Emily Henry. Emily Henry is one of my favorite authors. I think the way she does, they're kind of rom-com books, but they normally go a level deeper. This book, we have Daphne, who is our female main character, and she is engaged to this guy named Peter. Peter is shady, and he has been cheating on Daphne with our other male main character, Miles, his girlfriend. So their significant others have an affair, and so they're essentially left in the dust, and they're both heartbroken and trying to deal and trying to process. But the reality is that Daphne has nowhere to live, so she moves in with Miles. And there are so many tropes in this book, which I wasn't really expecting. There's fake dating, there's semi enemies to lovers. I also love Miles so much. He's like chaotic and Daphne's so practical, and so I feel like they really balance each other. And I haven't read many books that's like the roommate trope, so I did really appreciate the fact that they're essentially having to see each other all the time and deal with their feelings for each other. I thought that that was really fun, and their banter was so good. Maybe my favorite banter besides beach read in an Emily Henry book, dare I say. So yeah, this one definitely made the top 10 for 2024. I hate reading hardbacks, so I eventually caved and got in line on Libby, which I really recommend. It's how I read most of my books through 2024. Then the Binding 13 series, which is known as like the Book of Tom series. It is an Irish YA, say YA very lightly, romance series. And the found family in this book is just chef's kiss. I could and have reread it so many times. I think this year it was my third reread of the series. I only skip over one book, which was the new release this year, called Taming Seven. That follows one of the couples, and I didn't connect with that one. It didn't feel like it fit the characters that it was about, so it was a little bit disappointing. I loved it because we got glimpses of the other characters, to be fair. Binding 13 series is so incredible. I think you need to look up trigger warnings if you're considering reading this book. I loved it, but it also deals with such heavy subjects that I very cautiously call it my comfort read, because I love the characters so much, but what they go through is really horrible. It's about a girl named Shannon Lynch, and she has 4 brothers, and she essentially has to move schools because she's being bullied so bad. She has a terrible, like, cannot emphasize this enough, a terrible home life. She transfers school to this really well-off private school. She goes for her first day, and she's running across a rugby pitch or like field, and she's like, oh, I'm late for class, like this is my shortcut, and she gets hit in the head with a rugby ball. And the guy who kicked that rugby ball is Johnny Kavanagh. His life goal is to play for his country in Ireland for their rugby team, but he's really young and he's just like this breakout rugby star. Yeah, from there it just goes on, and I don't want to spoil it. It's just so sweet. And the other books follow her brother Joey and his girlfriend Aoife. It's so good. There are so many tropes in this series. Again, it's based on high school, but it definitely deals with very mature themes. Recommending it with extreme caution. Please look those up. Next up is Where Time Stands Still. I read this one for a Bookmas vlog, and it was so incredible. I went in thinking it was going to be a light, fun, Christmassy read because it's set on a Christmas tree farm. It is anything but that. If I had to compare it to something, I would say it's most similar to Beach Read by Emily Henry, where you know it's going to be a romance, but it actually touches on such deep topics, and the main characters bond over really intense stuff, but it feels really authentic. The story starts and it's about a lawyer, and she is pretty early on in her career, but this family contacts her specifically because they see how she's taken such great care of her past clients. The dad in the family has been the victim of a medical malpractice suit, and he's not able to communicate. Our female main character has to meet the son because of that, like his adult son, and Yeah, they've already had a run-in before this, and it was not the most glowing first impression, if you're getting what I'm saying. It's not great. All of her family has had early onset Alzheimer's, so she pretty much knows guaranteed she's also going to have that. Essentially in the next 10 years, it's likely that she'll start experiencing some of the symptoms. She's closed herself off, and she's like, I'm not letting other people deal with this. She meets our male main character, who is just like so curious about her and why she is the way she is. I think he is such a big acts of service guy, and that was one of my favorite parts about him. It doesn't come off like he's doing these things to get closer to her or to maybe earn points with her. He's just genuinely a good person, and his family is really involved in his life as well. Obviously his dad's gone through this really traumatic experience, and yeah, she really shows up for his family, and so it just makes so much sense why they have the connection that they do. Next up is The Right Move. Is it The Right Move? I think it was Caught Up. This is about a single dad playing on a baseball team, and he needs a nanny because his coach is like, you need to travel for this team. Keep firing nannies. You keep saying everyone's not good enough for your kid, but like at the end of the day, to have this job, someone needs to watch your kid. He's kind of like, this might be the end of my career. Like, I will make that sacrifice if I need to. And in comes our female main character, who is a pastry chef, but she's totally burnt out and she's kind of had enough and needs a break. Her dad is the coach of the baseball team. So she's like, I'm just gonna take the summer off, hang out with my dad, travel with him. Like, I just need to unplug from my job. And the dad is like, yeah, you can come, but you're gonna be his nanny. And the rest, really can't talk about, but so good. So good, chef's kiss. I had to pause because this guy was really mad he was locked up. Next up is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Essentially about two doctors, and they have like a workplace rival. Our female main character is recently divorced, and this guy comes in and she gets totally the wrong impression about him. And then eventually that kind of starts to change. There's fake dating tropes. It's so good. Next up is Daughter of the Forest. This book was unlike anything else I'd ever read before. I think it's based off an Irish folklore and is essentially about this princess who, her mother passes away and her dad remarries, but it's to like a stepmother, and puts a curse on her father. Her 6 brothers turn into swans. It's about her trying to reverse this curse, and she has to go through all these trials, and she essentially becomes the daughter of the forest, and the forest is kind of like a character in itself. I don't really know how to describe this in a different way, but it's really unique, really incredible, and I thought it was very cool how it was based on an Irish folklore, because I'd never read a book like that before. Last is Funny You Should Ask. This book was very popular, I want to say about 2 years ago. It's about a love story between an interviewer and a celebrity, and there's like time jumps. I don't necessarily think it's life-changing, but I would recommend it, and like, it is actually hilarious. And if you've read Wattpad books growing up, I think you would really like this book. Anyway, those are my top 10 books of 2024. If you enjoyed, please give it a like, subscribe, and let me know if you've read any of these, and if you have any that I didn't mention that you think I should read in 2025. Bye guys.